Hello everybody, this is Stephen House and this is Full Time Devils, and today I'm delighted to be joined again by Mr. Tony Park, Manchester United youth author and historian, and we'll throw a link to, it's on Amazon, isn't it, your book? Yeah, we'll throw a link in the description below, so go and check his book out, Sons of United. It's an absolutely fantastic book, brilliant resource for everything on Manchester United. You definitely need to go and check that out. So Tony, it's been a crazy season. There's been a lot happen, there's been a lot of changes, there's been some positivity, there's been some negativity. Let's start with the under-23s. We saw the start of the season, we saw Warren Joyce doing what Warren Joyce does, just getting on with it and grinding out a couple of results, and then Wigan come in for him. He moves on, and United at the moment have failed to replace him. Nicky Butt coming down from academy boss to take over the team for the temporarily. We narrowly miss out on relegation. But it's not been a terrible season, really. There's been some encouraging performances.
I think the word crazy is right. I think it's been one of the strangest reserve seasons I can remember since the early 90s, when we almost got relegated that year as well. And I think what you saw was, for the first time, you saw a couple of things. You saw the consequence of the underinvestment that we made in the academy 3 and 4 years ago. So what you had now is you've got a lot of the under-23 players from last year, the likes of Donald Love, Paddy McNair, James Weir and so forth. It was ready and right that they moved on. They needed first-team football. They were 21, 22 years old, playing in an under-23 league that they weren't learning anything. Meanwhile, if you looked at what the players were left, you then had an incredibly thin squad that was incredibly imbalanced, a lack of width, a lack of strike force, as you saw, and the young players coming up were 16, 17-year-old kids who were first-year scholars who were trying to back that up. And so the gap between a 16 or 17-year-old playing against a 23-year-old was massive. And I think for Nicky Butt, he's been on record publicly saying the under-20, I'll use his words, the under-23 league is crap. It does nothing to support player development. And in some respects, it was interesting listening to what Nicky was saying, because he was saying that these kids play academy football. So at under-8s, they're playing against the same kids. At under-9s, they're playing the same kids. At under-10s, they're playing the same kids. I mean, all the parents, they know each other. And then at 9, 10, 11, 12, some of these kids move around clubs, Blackburn, Rochdale, United, City, whatever.
Well, so some of them play for multiple teams at the time, don't they?
And so as a consequence, everybody knows everyone. So by the time you get to 16s, it's what I call vanilla football, because they all know each other. They've all played the same football for 8 years. And then they jump into the 23s, and it's slightly different, but it's still not competitive enough. So what you had Warren Joyce, through his brilliance as a coach at that level, able to make things happen with his discipline, his tactical awareness for juniors, and his ability to motivate and work with these young kids. Working great. When he left, and perhaps you could argue he wanted to test himself at a larger stage, I think the club was a little bit taken back that happened so quickly, and you sort of have to question the long-term planning of why it's taken so long to get an under-23 boss in place. Nicky's come down. I think that's a good thing, because he's seen it firsthand, some of the problems we've got. Again, I think when we went to Dallas Cup some weeks back, he was saying how ridiculous it was that we had to play another game instead of going to the Dallas Cup. The Dallas Cup was a much better experience for the lads. So he's very frustrated with the under-23 system. Whoever these Premier League and FA guys are, I don't think they've got a clue.
It was Scudamore's wet dream, this. It was his inception. 23 is the average age a player makes his debut in the Premier League. So 23
not at our place.
Yeah, not here. If you're 23 making your debut at United, the ship has sailed.
Absolutely.
And he said that's the average age of the Premier League debut, so that's the age that the reserve league should go to. And you think, no, you've got 3 years of passengers essentially there. But if you're 20 and you're not really on the cusp, then it's probably not going to happen here.
Well, let's take someone like Charlie Scott. So Charlie Scott was a first year reserve player, clearly not good enough from an experience perspective to get into the under-23s on a regular basis. He's played no football. He's played literally no football all season. How does that help his development? Whether he's good enough or not good enough is a different question. The question is, you only find out by playing the kid, and he's not had a chance in his right position. I don't think that's fair on him. Josh Doherty was another one. We brought him over from the States, didn't play him. I mean, I think there's a lot of decisions we're being taken here that just don't make sense. So when we do get an under-23 manager in place, hopefully that's sorted. But I do feel that Nicky's right. I feel that the actual system, the actual under-23 format is incredibly flawed. I think there's a bit in the middle. We need much more competitive action at under-19, under-20. where even if we're playing the likes of Altrincham or Salford City or something like that, like we used to do, and give these kids a chance. I mean, we've spoken before, Stephen, about in the 90s, and I'm not saying let's go back there, but in the 90s you would have a kid come out the academy system, 18 years old, and need to play in the reserves against Morecambe reserves and Marine reserves. Well, you should have seen some of these dockers, seeing an 18-year-old kid.
It wasn't an under-23 side, it was a reserve
Correct.
side. So you're talking players coming back from injury, you're talking the 32-year-old that's maybe hanging on a little bit. You're talking experienced professionals.
Well, the other thing I would say, can you imagine a Pereira playing next to Schweinsteiger in the reserves?
It'd been brilliant.
Not for Schweinsteiger potentially, but for Pereira to learn alongside that lad. Or, and I'm using another example, use someone like who's not getting a game in the first team at the moment. Fosu Mensah. You know.
So the season as a whole was a big frustration. I was sick of saying it after every single match. It's the same thing. We've played 7 or 8 defenders or midfielders because we've got. I think the key thing we was missing is potentially James Wilson, Januzaj and Pereira. If they was here and they would have been in the team, would have had a great balance. But they wasn't. They was all on loan or injured or both. And I think when you've been forced to play the likes of Scott McTominay as a centre forward, which he's not, and you've been forced to play Dev Redmond up front, or you're playing him as a number 10 or as a winger, and you're like, yeah, okay, I get that some of these young players need to develop and round out their skills. We saw Matty Willett played up front. You're looking at specialist positions at this age, I think, by this time. And I think United just didn't have them, and that underinvestment that you mentioned earlier, I think if we'd have just got some players in, the season might have gone entirely different. I think the season just stumbled from similar to the first team in many ways, where it was because we didn't have that movement, because we didn't have those specialists, we just seemed to draw, or we were beaten 1-0 because we couldn't score goals. I mean, if you look back on this season, it's not going to be a memorable one, is it? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Not really. I mean, we started under Joyce with some mixed results. As you mentioned, we got draws where we could have won. We got losses when we deserved to lose. We didn't play well in many games. We looked imbalanced straight away because of what we've been talking about, the underinvestment. And the likes of Bowie and Chong and some of these, but it was their first season at the club. They weren't ready to step up. So
some of them are 16.
Exactly. So they're not ready to step up. So you just had, and then we'd lost the other players. So you had a very small squad as well. It's probably the smallest squad I'd seen the under-23s or the reserves have for many a year. And that didn't help either. You got 1 or 2 injuries. Reilly went to Sheffield United. Fosu Mensah stepped up to the first team. So I think the 2 issues we had was we had 2 issues at fullback where we didn't have a regular fullback. So we ended up playing Olasonde, who was actually brought as a wide-sided right player, who's much better going forward than he is defensively. So I think he's struggled with his defensive game in the first half of the season. Mitchell, I think, has done really well at left back, but again, we know he's a forward. He's not a fullback. And he scored a cracking goal against Leicester, as you remember, with the lob, going back to the first half of the season. So it took time for those guys, and then we've got absolutely no target man at all, whether it's Willett, McTominay or Redmond. They're not. First of all, they're not forwards, and secondly, there was no goals, Stephen. We didn't score goals. If you think about it, last year, Januzaj popped in with a few, Weir popped in with a few, Pereira popped in with a few.
Keane.
Well. Will Keane came back from injury or loan, scored 5 goals against Norwich at Old Trafford last season, and that's just a really good example of when you have a proper, strong centre forward who knows his game, the difference that they can make, and it makes so much difference to the other players when they're feeling under a bit of pressure, can knock it forward, and the forward can either take on a man or hold the ball up, whatever they're going to do, whatever their style is.
It was that for me. That was the main thing. That it was. I don't think you're helping the development of the midfielders and defenders by playing midfielders and defenders up front, because they're not going to know the natural run a winger's going to make, the natural run a centre forward's going to make into a channel or behind. So those midfielders aren't seeing those balls that someone's going to, because they've got another midfielder who's kind of just standing there,
sure,
in the kind of centre forward position.
The other thing that was interesting, and I don't have a problem with players consciously being played in a different position as a development role. So if we say, let's play Matty Willock up front, and Matt, the reason we're going to play you up front for a couple of games is on purpose, in a team that's successful, because we want you to understand what it's like being a forward, because when you go back to playing midfield, you'll understand the balls you need to push through. You'll understand when and not to give when a player's in a certain position. You're reading it better.
I think that really helped Willock. I think he rounded his game out, and he's been such an improvement this season to last season. Takes more risks, looks more confident.
I think you're right.
That's helped, I think.
I think you're right, and as a consequence, the team this year haven't really known when to defend and when to push on, when to defend and when to push on, because they didn't want to be exposed at the back, because they were unusually, for them, not used to the fact that they were losing games. I mean, we won the league last year, and this year we're nowhere near it.
Almost relegated.
Very much so, although we finished mid-table because of a nice spurt towards the end. So overall, I would say really mixed results, including the Premier League International Cup. If you look at the records, it's lots of 1-0s and 2-1s, and we never battered anybody like we used to do. And so I think the confidence was down. Joyce left, more confidence down. Nicky Butt, very different style, very old school in style, if you like.
Nicky Butt's the angriest man you've ever seen on a touchline as well. They should actually just put a camera on him, because he's hilarious, isn't he? He's so twitchy.
Well, he cares. He's been brought up with this club, and he cares so much. And what he sees frustrates him. And as I said earlier, I think the systems frustrates him as much as anything else. So moving forward, we've come towards the end of the season with a little bit of pressure, and we've pulled out 3 or 4 really good results, and we've finished in mid-table. But I think that's papers over cracks, really. I still think we need to sort out the managerial position. I still think we need a forward to balance the team. We'll probably be seeing some of the kids moving into the under-23s more regularly next year. The likes of Bowie and Chong and DJ Buffonge. I would like to see, when he comes back from injury, you'd expect Angel Gomez to get some chances in the under-23s next season. So overall, very disappointing. Lots of reasons why. The other thing I think is, other clubs played particularly well this season as well. But I think we need big improvements next year throughout the whole club. And
possibly some just investment. There must be players on free transfers that would kill for the chance to come and play for Manchester United. An 18, 19-year-old, that's perhaps not good enough for a first team. But do you know what? He can make a run. He can do a job. I think we signed the likes of Butner and Richie Delatte. We signed players like that for a specific job in the team. There was never going to be Ballon d'Or winning FIFA Pro 11 players, but they can do a specific job. And I think that the under-23s really needed a couple of those. There must be free transfers all over the place.
I mean, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that too much, but you look at like a Regan Poole came from Newport, Ola Sunday came from the States. So where are the forwards out there that could do a job?
There's got to be some. I'm sure
you would have
there's
thought
got
so.
to be some.
You would have thought so.
Let's talk about the players individually then, because we've got some wonderful individual performances, despite the team performances this season. We recently saw Josh Harrop. He's done that all season, hasn't he? He's not had a massive dip in performances. Josh Harrop's really looked good, but it's a make or break time for him now, isn't it? Is he going to stay at the club and perhaps get a chance? Because I think he'd probably be behind Pereira in the pecking order, who's certainly behind Mkhitaryan and all the rest in the first team. What does Josh Harrop do now? I
think Josh was a casualty of 2 things. He has been consistently injured. The amount of times I've seen him pull up with a hamstring injury, particularly his hamstrings, or a hip injury. He had a spell out last year injured. He had a couple of operations. And this season, again, it's been stop-start. I don't know why that is. I don't know if he's just a little bit injury prone, or there's something else going on with his body, or even the pitch and the makeup, the training. But that has to get resolved. And the other thing that's been against him has been the performance of the team. When other players, he's not had a regular centre midfield pairing to support him. One thing you can't question is his class. One thing you can't question is his finishing ability, his confidence. He's almost got that arrogance, and I like that about Josh. 3 or 4 years ago, I would say I think he's the one to watch, because he's exciting. He's an exciting player. You saw that when he played in the game against Tottenham at Old Trafford, and he got those 3 goals. Every goal was class. And he's got that ability, that X factor, that wow factor that fans love, to get them out of their seats. I think he needs a team around him to allow him to shine. He didn't have that this season. But he still finished as the reserve's top goal scorer, all things considered. So I agree. I think it's a make or break season. I'm not sure what the club is doing in terms of contract. I've got a funny feeling he might be out of contract this year. So whether they offer him a new one or whether he's got 1 year left, I'm not sure. But he's going to be at that stage. Does he need a loan spell? I think every time that's come up, he's been having that injury issue. So maybe there's an opportunity for him to get some first team games under his belt with another club. I think you're right. I think it's the next 6 to 12 months will be the make or break for Josh. I hope he make it because he's a talenting prospect.
We're going to talk about Axel Tuanzebe because he was the one at the start of the season that we said, this guy is not just banging on a door, he's levering it with everything that he's got. And he finally does get his debut. His Premier League debut against Arsenal was wonderful to see, wasn't it? But not a surprise to anyone who's seen him in the 18s, 21s or 23s.
I think you have to look at his profile in a number of ways. When you look at a player, I think they've all got the skill. I think they're not going to be at a club like ours if they can't play football, so that's a given. But then you look on top of that, he's got incredible pace, he's physically strong. We've had this conversation about the one flaw he might have is in the air, although that's not been exposed at Premier League level.
I think that was, we're saying if he's got a flaw, it's his heading. We're not saying his heading
No,
because
not
I've seen a lot of people online going, oh, Mourinho's not used him because his heading's rubbish. It's not like it's rubbish. It's
I wouldn't say that. I think that's just inexperience, where he's caught out of position, he's not reading what's going on behind him, and then as a consequence, his athleticism is there, without a shadow of a doubt. That aggressiveness in the air, I suppose, is what I'm referring to. He hasn't got that, but that's not to say that can't be developed. The other thing that's interesting is when you've got other players in the team, like playing next to Bailey or playing next to Smalling, who are aggressive in the air, then maybe that's not even as critical as a need at first team level and perhaps at reserve level when he's expected. But the thing that I like most about him, more than all of those things, is his confidence and his composure. To play against Arsenal out of position at right back and to play the game he played and not give the opponent pretty much a kick in the game showed that composure and that temperament.
Not just any opponent. We're talking Alexis Sanchez, who's wonderful.
A very, very good player. And then to play against, on Tottenham, playing against Christian Eriksen, when he was doing a man marking job for 62 minutes or whatever the case may be, and again he did a decent enough job in a position he's never played before. I'd love Jose to just play him as a centre half, which is his right position, and just let the kid develop. But it's not going to do him any harm, and he's not looked out of place. I think he's been great. He's definitely a starter for the tour.
The other player that was nominated for the Player of the Year awards, Demi Mitchell, which was a little bit of a surprise, I thought. Because although his performances have been good, I think we almost maybe lowered the bar because he was out of position. But he has adapted to playing left back fantastically. And it reminds me of an early Evra.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. Again, with all these players, and people forget, when Lee Sharpe first came into the club, he was a left winger from Torquay. Still only 17 years old, so he played in our youth team and what have you. But within a few months, Ferguson put him at left back. And for a couple of years, he played left back. And he looked very, very effective as a left back. It was only when he got bigger and stronger and more mature that they pushed him up to a left wing. Giggs played left back when he was, at first, moving into the first team. Funnily enough, I think you'll even find that Paul Ince and Roy Keane played right back.
I remember Keane, I don't remember Ince, I do remember Keane.
They played right back for a length of time. And that is all about giving them positioning awareness, giving them some opportunity to find their feet at a big club like United. So I think it took Demi a little bit of time to find his feet in that way. Defensively, he still lacks the strength.
I agree on that, yeah.
He still lacks some strength. I think what's going to be interesting is the new under-23 manager, where he sees Demi in the long term. Because are they doing it because they needed a left fullback and they had no one else, because they didn't buy any fullbacks or develop any fullbacks? Are they doing it because they needed the stopgap, or are they doing it because they see Demi as, hey, this lad could be a potential left back for the future? That would be the interesting question for me, because if they're doing it for the former, then let's find a fullback and let's get Demi up front doing what he can do on the left wing. If it's for the latter, then what are they doing in training to help him with his defensive responsibilities and his defensive game, both tactically and physically?
So the under-18s then, at the start of the season, so much promise. We thought a good FA Youth Cup run is what this team needs. Might as well just go straight into it. He crashed out in the first hurdle at Old Trafford to Southampton in a really disappointing game.
I have to say that the pedigree we've got in the FA Youth Cup and the history we've got in the FA Youth Cup, it's the one tournament that, out of all the others, hurts me when we don't do well. If we play well and we go out, fair enough, but to go out at home when you're a goal up playing well and for whatever reason you just switch off and you lose 2-1, it just is, it deflates you. It deflates you so badly, and that was an incredible disappointment.
It does on the back. I mean, we've jumped straight in there to the middle of the season essentially, but it does on the back of so many. I mean, in contrast to the first team and the under-23s, we've seen so many brilliantly free-flowing goals, team goals. We've put 5 past teams. We look like we can absolutely blow anybody out of the water. Southampton come and you think we're going to absolutely tear these to pieces. I'm thinking semi-finals, final maybe for this team, and we didn't.
It was bizarre because if you look at the season overall, and forget the merit group stuff that's happened in the last towards the end of the season here, the beginning of the season was fabulous. We had a bit of a mixed start. We lost 4-0 to Derby in the opening game of the season,
and then Liverpool as well.
And then we lost to Liverpool at Altrincham 2-1, and we shouldn't have lost that game. We actually deserved something out of that game, but nevertheless, we had a shaky start. And then all of a sudden we went on this run where we seemed to score 5 goals every week. Chong, started to do his thing. He settled in the team very quickly. I think speaking English helps a lot. Burkhardt was pushing forward, not scoring as many goals as I thought he might, but I still don't think we're playing to his strengths as a team yet. You had Buffon coming to play. Gomez was on fire, coming off the bench, as you remember, against Everton, scoring a hat-trick. So all of a sudden, we were battering these teams 4 and 5-0. Virtually, I think it was every week we were scoring 4 or 5 goals.
It was brilliant to watch.
It was fantastic. And what you had, it reminded me, and I'm going to say this in retrospect, but it reminded me of those Busby Babe teams or the early class of 92 teams where you had the goals coming from everywhere, because Boonen would be chipping in with a couple of goals and Chong would be scoring and Buffon would be scoring and Burkhardt scores and Gomez scores and then Barlow would come off the bench and score. And all of a sudden you didn't know where the goals were going to come from because you had so many players capable of doing some great things. And that led us all the way up to Christmas, where I think we were neck and neck with City at the top of the league. I think by the time we got to Christmas, we'd only lost 1 further game, and that was at City. I think you were there at the mini stadium, the 2-0 loss.
I can't remember who was in net. Was it Ilias in net?
Yeah, he got sent off.
I mean, he cleaned the City lad out completely, but it was an even game.
Up to that point, it was an even game.
It was a very even game. It was a really good, entertaining game at 0-0.
It was.
That had happened.
So that was interesting in terms of, up to that point, we were still the second best team in the North, and that proved to be the case throughout the season. And then we got knocked out by Southampton, and that's why it was such a deflating performance, Stephen, because it was a bit of a shock, given the level of performances we'd been playing up to that point. And it was I suppose it was a real outlier. And I don't know whether some of the players froze at Old Trafford. I don't know whether there was any complacency, whether it was an off night. One or two theories was that the team was a little bit imbalanced with Gomez moving out of his normal role to get Gribben into the team.
Yes, we did change it up to accommodate Gribben. I can't remember who got benched. Was it Whelan or Buffon ended up getting benched on the back of that?
That's right. I think it might have been Indy. I'm not sure, but to get Cal into the team, which was the right thing to do, as an experienced player, we needed him in the side. I think because he wasn't playing under 18 football. Clearly, I think that upset our balance. And as a consequence, we didn't look as free-flowing as we had done up to that point.
Well, I thought the basis of the success this season, and we was both very excited about O'Connor coming in, and that proved to be well-founded. That he was excellent. Tyrell Warren's had a fantastic season at centre-half. But the basis of the success of this team was that midfield triangle. Cal Whelan just mopping up and doing a fantastic job, and well-deserving of his nomination for Player of the Year. Angel Gomez just looking unbelievably good and dominating and controlling games alongside DJ Buffon. That midfield three was as good as it was getting for us, wasn't it? And that provided the platform then for Chong and for Boonen and for Burkhardt. And it was a really nice, like I said, balance to the team. And I think, there might have been an element maybe that it was slightly unbalanced on the back of bringing Gribben in, who's himself a wonderful player. It's not like he's not of that level. He's easily of that level. He wasn't playing regularly with them at that time, and unfortunately that sort of derailed our FA Cup run.
I think that's right.
We didn't manage to beat City at home. Was you at that game?
Yeah, 2-2.
Yeah, we saw Gribben again, missed a penalty unfortunately.
At 1-0, sorry, at 2-0. Sorry, no, it was at 1-0.
Yes, to make it 2.
To make it 2-0.
And they went straight up the pitch and scored. and then scored again, and yeah, that was that. Ultimately, yeah, we wasn't up to the scratch of Manchester City, but I've been really impressed with the way McKenna has implemented his tactics. I like some of the stuff he's doing outside of the under-18s league as well. He's taken them off to little cups where we've had success playing indoor tournament in Germany, which we brought the biggest trophy in the world back from. And I really like the sort of ethos that he seems to play his football with, McKenna.
Yeah, I think it's helped. I'm a big Paul McGuinness fan. I always have been Paul McGuinness fan, and I felt that the team was under resourced while Paul was around for whatever reason. McKenna's come in, and regardless of why or how great, we've got talent in the team. Buffon's come in from Fulham, Burkhardt from Switzerland, Chong from the Netherlands, and so forth and so on, and a couple of others have stepped up, and all of a sudden you've got this exciting team. So they went to the Slovakian Tour and they played Zelina, whoever they played. So Paul had implemented that for a few years before, and that was a success. Paul had also taken them to the Sparkasse Cup for the five-a-side tournament. We hadn't always done so well, so it was absolutely fantastic to see us playing some really nice one-touch football and bring that really huge trophy back to the UK. Didn't
Indy Boonen play in net one of those games and score from being in net as well? Took it past them and scored. Yeah, unbelievable. And
that's great. I mean, it's great development.
So at the start of the season, we knew that there was going to be some good performances. There was players that we was all excited about. I'm definitely sure we're going to get onto those. But there was a couple of players that we have been happy with the emergence of, and I think, for me, Lee O'Connor was one that I don't think he's a centre half, but I think as a fullback, I think you've got a real Gary Neville in him. I think
it's interesting you should say Gary Neville. I was talking to some friends of mine in Ireland who said you've got some player here, and they were incredibly excited. So I was really looking forward to seeing him play. And the first time I saw him play, the first game of the season, I thought, wow, this boy. He's quick, he reads the game well, he's physical. The one thing he lacks is a bit of height, like Gary Neville did.
He's very small and quite slight, but yeah, he puts himself about.
He reads the game well, but the thing that keeps coming out again is maturity, composure. He's captain of the Ireland under-17 team who have been playing in the under-17 European Championship in Croatia. He's got leadership written all about him. I think he looked class, and without a shadow of a doubt, he was one of the stars of the team. Probably the understated star of the team 18s this season, given the goal-scoring exploits of those forward lads we were talking about. And I think he's done brilliantly. So I totally agree, and I'm really looking forward to seeing his second season next year.
Yeah, I think he might even be a potential shout to push in the under-23s next year, because I think that right-back slot's not been nailed down by anybody, and I think it would really force his development. Again, he's very young. I think he's not even 17 at the moment, so I think forcing him into play against under-23s will really drag out the player in him, and he's definitely a player in there. Terrell Warren, just looking like a replica of Vidic. He's aggressive, he's angry all the time, but he's very dominating, and what a season he's had at centre half.
I agree. I think he's been incredibly consistent. He's been a little bit wayward some of his tackling because he's got such that aggressive nature where he, like a Vidic,
I like that, mate.
I know.
I like that bit of edge to him.
I think he's got tired towards the end of the season. The last couple of games, he probably hasn't been up to the scratch that he has been earlier in the season. So I don't know if that's just tiredness, and if you look at some of the other options we've had from the bench, we probably haven't had the same quality that we have with O'Connor and Warren. So as a consequence, it's always been tough for him to get a break. He probably could have done with a bit of a break, but he's done brilliantly. He's going to be interesting to see how he physically progresses. The other thing that's going to be interesting with Warren is the young kids from the 16s are going to be coming up next season. The Mamboinis, the one or two others the Ethan Laird, who's got a very similar style to him. Ethan will be pushing him very strongly as well next season, so that's going to be interesting.
Well, I thought Ethan was going to be playing. This is one of the under-16s coming through, but we might as well touch on him because he's going to be very big next season. For me, his best games have always been at left-back, Ethan. I spoke to him the other day and he said that the club has told him that he's going to be a right-back this season.
I think he's a right-back.
Interesting that, because I think I like how attacking he is when he comes inside from left-back. But again, that didn't make a lot of sense for me, which is why I'm thinking O'Connor's probably been moving up, because you don't want O'Connor and Laird going head-to-head because it's a waste for me. But yeah, I thought Terrell Warren has been phenomenal. And the problem I think Warren's going to face is you've got Warren at one age, you've got Tuanzebe ahead of him, you've got Roshan Williams ahead of him, and there's a year between all of those. Now, all three will not make it at Old Trafford. One, because Jose Mourinho's manager, and I think that he's not going to just decide that 17 and 18-year-old centre-halves is the way to go. But I just think that there's not enough space in between them all. And when you look to the first team, you've got Baye, who's only 23 as well. So it's not like he's going to be coming to the end of his career anytime soon. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of them makes it. And I don't know if you can pin your hat on any of them yet, because it might be Tuanzebe is the closest at the moment, but maybe he needs to go on loan. You don't know if his development might stagnate, but not make games.
I like the loan thing. I think we cocked up with Michael Keane. I think we cocked up big style with Michael Keane. What we should have done with Michael is do a Johnny Evans. We put Johnny Evans out on loan for 2 years. He went to Antwerp, he went to Sunderland, and then we got him back, and he was third and fourth string. But we said to him, you're going to get in this team. And he had the same profile as the players you're talking about. Very composed, very confident, strong on the ball, technically very good. It was around positioning and a few other things that you learn by playing. I would like to see, I think, Tuanzebe, Roshon Williams, Leo Connor, one or two others. I think we've just got to really think long-term what our development plans are with these boys and say, well, do you know what? Why can't we, in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, have Roshon and Tuanzebe as our two centre-halves? If that's where we want to go, okay, let's buy a leader for the first team, because I think we're missing a leader at the back. Absolutely. Next to Baye. Let's buy a centre-half, but let's buy someone at 25, 26 who's got another 4 years ahead of them. And then let's say to these two young lads, learn from Bailey in that, because in 3 or 4 years' time, you're going to be the centre-half partnering. Is that the conversation we're having? That's the conversation I'd like them to
It's the conversation we would have, but is it the conversation Jose and Woodward are having? I'm not sure that, Roshon's going to sell as many shirts as Varane.
And Roshon played was eligible to play for the 18s this season, has been out injured for virtually the whole campaign. Probably in the second half would have been pushed into the 23s. So it's a shame we've not seen his development at that level. But yeah, O'Connor and Warren at the back have been superb. One of the players who I think has gone very unnoticed is George Tanner. I think he was a wide player, midfield player who's been converted. I remember talking to him at the beginning of the season and saying, how are you enjoying it? And he's saying, I'm still getting my head around it. And then he collared me at one of the games, 3 or 4 games in, and saying, I'm loving this. I'm loving the time on the ball. I'm loving the physicality of it. And I thought he had a great season. I thought he was incredibly consistent all the way through for a player in his first year at that level.
One player that I think has got a bit of a cult following from the 18s is Cal Whelan. And I think there's a bit of carrick about him. There's a little bit of... There's just a real honesty to the way he plays the game, I think, and he's recently been given the armband as well, which I think is fantastic. He's had a real good season, like I said, out of the limelight. The defence has put in some real good, eye-catching performances, and the attack obviously has been scoring goals. But none of this happens without Cal Whelan doing that dirty work in the middle of the pitch. He's had a great season, hasn't he?
Yeah, there was a couple of players who were in the 18s reserves a few years ago. One was a guy called David Fox. And another guy was Danny Rose, and he reminds me of those two players. He's that centre pin that just links everything together. And he's not fancy. He just does the simple game. It's a short ball. He's not looking for the Hollywood balls, and I think his fellow players appreciate that. I think they like the role that he plays, because it means that they have a bit more freedom. The Boons and the Chongs have a bit more freedom to bomb forward, knowing that he's going to play that, you mentioned Carrick role, but play that role in the centre of midfield and just tie things together between the two. I laughed with him not long ago and said, are you going to score a goal this season? And he laughed back saying, I hope so. I got one last year. And if there's one weakness of his game, there's not enough goals. But then again, you could say that about Michael Carrick, I suppose, as well.
It's not his game. It's not what he's there to do. And I think he does a fantastic job of what he does. And I've been really impressed with him this season. Let's get on to some of the fancier names. The one name that we was all excited about, how is he going to do in the under-18s, Angel Gomez. I don't think we've been let down in the slightest.
He's that player. He just seems so unfazed at whatever level he's playing at. He gets the ball, he lays it off, he gets the ball, he does a trick, he gets the ball, he beats 4 players.
Have you seen him run this season?
Not really.
No, I don't think he runs.
He doesn't need to.
He walks.
He just glides through the game, and then he sees an open goal or he sees a chance of goal, and he can score tap-ins, he can score 30, 40 yard drive, not 40 yards perhaps, but 20 or 30 yard, he can smack them from there. He does 1-2s. He's got everything in his game, and I think some of the goal scoring exploits we saw up to perhaps February when he got injured, I think he was on target to to be the leading goal scorer in the team. He was on target to.
He probably could have got 20 goals, in all honesty, which is ridiculous from a number 8. Sometimes occasional number 6. For those watching at home that don't quite know him, who would you really compare him to as a footballer that's out there that people might know?
God, what a question. I don't think I would compare him to anybody. I really don't. People can say he looks like this or he looks like that. He doesn't. He's got his very own style. He's small, he's diminutive, incredible balance. The ball seems glued to his bootlaces.
Unbelievable balance and agility.
For me, can't knock him off the ball.
Iniesta is the one that he reminds me of a lot in terms of that ability to dictate and then ghost in, and of unbelievable technique and chips. Well, he probably chips in with far more goals than Iniesta does, I think, as well. But yeah, he's been an absolute joy to watch, and he has been the standout player in this team. I think it goes without saying. Scoring the goals that he scored from midfield has been phenomenal. Captain of England. England waited till the literal last second before they couldn't take him to Croatia because they knew how integral he is, and that's a very good England side as well, by the way. I think Gomez this season hasn't let anybody down.
Not
in fact, I think he might have even raised the very high expectations that we already had for him. Next season, do you think he'll still be part of the 18s, or do you think he's got to now go into the 23s? I think he'd probably straddle both a little bit.
I think you're right. I think the first 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months of the year, he'll be in the 18s. He'll have a cameo role because they don't play on the same nights. Obviously, they play Saturdays and Wednesdays or whatever. So he'll still be available. He'll come off the bench, and then gradually. And that will be up to the two managers. Gradually, he'll say goodbye to the 18s, and he'll be playing regularly for the 23s before the end of the season next year, without any doubt in my mind.
Chong. So this is another lad that came with a lot of excitement, and he didn't disappoint either.
Pace, aggression, discipline, tracking back. Flair. He's got the tricks. I was really very impressed with him. Very, very often as with Burkhardt, I think Burkhardt took a little bit of time to get used to the game in England. Chong didn't do that. He just took to it like a duck to water. I think maybe it's easier for a wide player to do that. He's so quick that he's got this attacking mindset. I think he would be regarded in my mind as a typical United player. He wants to bomb forward. He wants to score goals. He's a team player at the same time. He reminds me a little bit of David Beckham, not in terms of his passing.
I was going to say Kanchelskis in terms of that super direct, super aggressive, fast running. On the opposite side.
Yeah, I think he's got that Kanchelskis bit in him. Kanchelskis always had that head down speed merchant. I think Chong's got a greater, more expansive game. His head's up a lot. He hasn't obviously got Beckham's passing ability, but maybe a bit of both. But I suppose because he's got that tall, lean, young Beckham look, if you like. But very exciting talent. Very, very upsetting to hear that he was crocked badly when in that Everton game, when the Everton guy had 2 or 3 goes at him in different tackles and didn't get any protection from the ref. And then he got this knee injury and he's been out for the season. But he seems I spoke to him, he seems very confident he's going to be fit for the start of the season. All
right, I was going to ask you actually, because I haven't seen him, I have seen him, I haven't spoke to him about his injury. I was wondering if it's going to be maybe a Christmas thing before we really see him back at his level again.
I think it'll be before Christmas. Whether it's actually right at the beginning of the campaign, don't know. But as far as I'm aware, it's all going well, and obviously he's not going to rush it. But I think we'll hope to see him in action, not too distant into the new season.
The last player that I want to really touch on, because I think he's different to all of the others in the way he plays the game, is Indy Boonen. I think he's had a cracker of a season this year, Indy, and some unbelievable close control and some great goals that he scored as well. He's had a good season. He's had a cracking season. I totally agree. He's a different type of player. He brings a different type of thing to the game in terms of the way he runs through the lines and behind the defence. My question is, I don't necessarily think we've always played to his strengths either this season, and that can be frustrating for the player. But without a shadow of a doubt, we've got a nice young player here. Because when he first came, I didn't see what the hype was about. But last season, or the season just gone, he's really come into his own. He hasn't played every game, as none of the players have. So when he has come in, he's done great things, and he's contributed with goals. And it's just nice, Stephen, to have this incredible balance in the forward line, which those players give you. It's going to be really interesting to see who stays and who is moved up, and obviously what we've got coming through from the 16s as well. We saw some of the 16s, well, the bench was entirely populated by 16s last week in terms of who comes up from there and who really stakes their claim. I think Dion McGee has got one bit of potential. I think we could see him. I thought Brandon Williams looked great when he came on, and there's others that are going to come and do bits as well, I think. So the injuries towards the back end of the season didn't really temper performances, or results at least, that badly, did they? Ethan Hamilton and Eddie Barlow coming in.
I like Ethan Hamilton. I think he's an old school player. He's strong, he's physical. Technically, he's just as good. He runs at people, and defences do not like this. And when you've got someone big and strong, running at you, and again, and he plays a different way. He isn't, because he's come from Hutchinson Boys Club in Scotland, which is a boys' club, not an academy per se. He hasn't been coached with an academy way. So that means all these players in the academy see these guys running at them. They go, why isn't he passing the ball? Why aren't they doing neat triangles? And he just runs at them, particularly wide, and gets crosses in. And he's been a delight to watch. I like him a lot. I like his ethos. I like his attitude. I like the way in which he's totally focused on his football. He is got an incredible composure. And I think we saw that towards the end of the season when he was drafted into the 23s under Nicky Butt, because Nicky Butt likes that sort of player. So I think with him and Eddie Barlow coming into the team, after Gomez and Chong, and to a lesser extent Boonen, got their injuries, helped us maintain that momentum, so that when we got into the merit stages, when we finished the league second to City, and that's probably right based on the two teams over the course of the year, we entered the merit stages under really good confidence. Now, what happened was we lost a few more players with injury and what have you, and so we probably didn't do ourselves justice in the merit stage once we got up against Arsenal and Chelsea and one or two others, and I think we finished fourth in the end. But overall, it was a really good under-18 season that augurs so well for the future, with a few new 16s coming in. And as I say, we've got the Gomezes and the Chongs and the Boonens, but we've also got the Hamiltons and the Barlows.
And I think Eddie Barlow we're going to talk about more in depth in a standalone video, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. So me and Tony recorded our end-of-season youth review prior to the Crystal Palace match, where we saw Jose Mourinho start debuting players. Now the season's over and we've seen 6 debutants from the academy from Jose Mourinho, and the most exciting one of all of those, and the one that we even discussed like it's probably a long way off, was Angel Gomez. Now Jose Mourinho broke a Premier League record by fielding Angel Gomez, and he settles in nicely just behind Duncan Edwards in terms of the youngest ever appearances for Manchester United. That's a massive, massive thing. I think Angel's going to go on and have a great career, although I do not expect to see him in the first team next season. You might see him in a League Cup, but I think there's a big campaign there for the under-18s now, FA Youth Cup, UEFA Youth League, and a big season for him in the under-23s to continue his development. So don't get too carried away and excited and upset if you don't see the guy in the next season. His development is definitely underway. He's already got that first team experience under his belt. Big future for him. Really happy for him. Josh Harrop, we said the guy scores goals, scores classy goals. He makes his debut under Jose Mourinho and scored an absolutely cracking goal. He had a fantastic performance and was possibly only beaten to being man of the match by, I thought, Demi Mitchell was unbelievably good. Him and Demi on that left-hand side, I hope, have forced Jose Mourinho to reconsider what he thinks about academy players. Because actually on the day, the academy players really stepped up and they looked the best players on the pitch. McTominay in the middle was absolutely fantastic, getting his full debut. He looked great alongside Axel Tuanzebe. Played out of position in that holding midfield role, looking absolutely fantastic. I think out of those that we saw get their debuts on the final game of the season, it's still Axel Tuanzebe that I would expect to see in the first team the soonest. And I think he's the one that they're really pinning their hopes on, alongside Fosu Mensah, that we might be seeing next season. But all positive, and what an end to the season it was for those young lads. Now, people are criticising Jose Mourinho and saying that, oh, he only played these lads once the season was over. But you tell me, or you tell them lads, that this doesn't mean anything, and I think you'll find it does. Fantastic way to end the season, and actually, from a youth perspective, what a real positive that was as well. So no matter what these lads go on and do in their careers now, I think it's going to be a real bonus for them that they all made their debut under Jose Mourinho in his first season, and I hope that they've started to put the cogs in place to try and change Jose Mourinho's mind in terms of what he thinks of youth, because they all put in an absolutely fantastic performance. Tony, this has been a fantastic chat. Hopefully some of you guys at home have learned a little bit more about what's to come from the under-23s. This is the fabric of Manchester United, the under-23s, the under-18s, heritage. And actually, you've got a cracking stat that you threw out on Twitter the other day. Actually, do you want to tell the people, hopefully it's the right stat that I'm thinking of, but do you want to tell the people the stat that we surpassed the other day with McTominay coming on?
McTominay, yeah, interestingly, most clubs buy players, most clubs produce players, but for the first time we've had 449 players play for our first team since 1938, and 225 of those have come through our youth system or our academy system, which means that over 50% of every single player that's played for our first team since 1939 has been academy produced.
Think about that. Just think about that. When you say, why do people care so much about the youth of Manchester United? It's because more than half of our players have come through the ranks. That is Manchester United. And despite the millions and billions that we throw around on transfers, how many games are we up to? We're over 3,800.
3,865, I think.
Consecutive games without a break where there's been a youth player in the matchday squad. There is nobody in the world that can come up with that, especially at the top level in Europe. That is a phenomenal stat. Looking ahead towards maybe next season, who do you think is going to be the one that really starts to break through?
Wow, what a question. I think that's the huge unknown, particularly with a new manager. He's still under pressure to get results. I think he's under a little pressure with the style of play. He hasn't got the players that he wants. Is he looking in the academy and seeing those players in the academy? Question mark. Is he likely to go in the transfer market? Question mark, but probably more likely. So when I look at the squad, you've seen McTominay come in. If we buy more players, is he going to get a chance next season? I'm not sure. Matty Willock, is he going to be good enough alongside the Pogbas and the Mkhitaryan's and the others? Question mark. Tuanzebe, I'd say yes. I think Tuanzebe's pushed forward. I think Roshon Williams. If he recovers, I think he's good enough to make a push next season. Joe Reilly, we've forgotten about Joe Reilly. He had a really good debut for Sheffield United. They liked him a lot, but he got a quick injury. So maybe he's going to get a chance. We saw Cameron Borthwick-Jackson come back off loan from Wolves and play in the under-23s. Is he going to get a chance at left back, over Luke Shaw? At the end of the day, it comes down to one thing. When you give these players a chance, do they take it? And if they take it, does that impress the manager? Is that enough for the manager? Tuanzebe's taken his chance, in my opinion. So therefore the manager will trust him and give him more opportunities. Have the others done enough so far? They've not been given a real chance. That's the question. Do
you think performances like what we've seen Marcus Rashford have, a pretty consistent season, despite, he's not really tore it up like he did last season, but he's had a pretty consistent season, and that determination and that energy that he brings into the team, do you think that, coupled with the performance that you saw from Tuanzebe, do you think that's going to give Jose a little bit of confidence that, actually, I don't need to buy has-beens, I don't need to buy experienced pros all the time. I can go to this well and bring something out?
And I'm talking personal here. I'm not sure all of our players are ready, because we've not been giving them a chance over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, Van Gaal did put players in the team, but then we've sold them. So those players aren't at the club anymore. The Weirs and all these other players. So those players aren't around. So that means that there's still a gap. And I still think Tuanzebe's 18. Is he ready now for a long-term, can we now trust him for 38 games a season plus European football? That's a huge question mark.
Yeah, not as your first choice, but he's certainly good enough to be part of the squad.
Absolutely. So then you've got to look at who is on the Tuanzebe's level, who's the ones tearing up the 23s, to use your language, and are pushing, and we're thinking, we don't understand why they're not getting a chance. I don't see enough of those players.
No, I think you're right. There was only really Tuanzebe. Although I will say, I do agree with you that I think that Reilly is definitely someone that could and should be considered. And when you think about some of the players that are coming back on loan, I think
Pereira's a good shout.
Yeah, I think Pereira could be good enough to be in the squad. Certainly don't think he's going to push Mkhitaryan out of the way, but
and he's a different type of player as well. So I think that's the hard thing. Are the players ready enough? And I think if Mourinho had a couple more seasons and he sees the likes of the Gomez's coming through, that might change the game. But as far as I'm concerned, next season, I think unless we have similar injury issues that we had this season, I think it might be tougher for some of our academy players to get a chance next season. That's just my opinion.
I think you're right. I don't think there's many that would disagree. I think, I saw a lot of people talking online like, can't we just go and find another Rashford? Like, well, there isn't one. in the team at the moment. I mean, even Rashford was a little bit of a surprise, the way he came through, the way he did, and the way he got his opportunity. But he was there. He was doing things at that time, whereas at the moment, there's not really anyone outside of the names that we've mentioned, a couple of the players that are on loan. And next season we've got a big chance that it might not be those that are coming through. It might be people that we've already seen. It might be Fosu Mensah. Jose seems to like him. I think he would have got minutes towards the back end of the season if it wasn't for his injury. But I guess we will have to see.
And the rule always is you don't know until you try them out.
Absolutely. Anyway, Tony, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for joining me. If you want to go and check Tony out, that's Mr. Moojak on Twitter. And check out his book in the description below. And I'm sure we'll see you again at the start of next season.
Great.
As we ever figure it out, because there's also a couple of signings that we think that are on the way, aren't there?
Yes, we do.
There's a lad called Traore, which you might see.
Aliou Traore from PSG.
I'm hearing good things. People telling me that he's a copy and paste of Pogba.
So I believe.
So we will find out what all that's about early next season. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for you guys watching us at home. Who do you think is going to be the next one to break through for United? Stick it in the comments. Who do you want to know more about? Stick that in the comments and we'll have a look and we'll see about making a video on those for you. See you later.